Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners of Business Innovators Radio. This is Andy Curry. I am your host. And today I am really fired up because I have with me Scott Lesnick, who has been speaking professionally for 5 years. And boy, does he have some interesting topics. Let me give you a quick summary of some of his topics. The first one is the true story of getting his kids back after being kidnapped. And he wrote a book on it. I'm really anxious to hear about that because I have something very much in common with that. The next topic he talks about is growing sales and margins and managing better. And another topic that he has is managing, motivating, and mentoring the 4 generations in the workplace. Scott speaks primarily in the U.S. He's based out of Wisconsin. As I said earlier, he's written a book, and he's got one in the works. And he is a member of the NSA, where he teaches at the Academy on the nuts and bolts of the speaking business in being a professional speaker. So, Scott, welcome to the program.
Andy, thanks so much. You know, I have to say, as soon as we connected and I saw your name was Andy Curry, it took me back to grade school and my woodshop teacher, who was this big 6'3", no-nonsense guy by the name of Andy Curry, who we called Mr. Curry. And I was thinking back, and of all the things we could do in woodshop that you probably can't do today, but the fact that I'm talking to Andy Curry is kind of cool. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So I'm giving you chills, kind of, but not on purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, I really want to hear about your speaking business, and in fact, I want to hear at great length about your story on getting your kids kidnapped, because that is really interesting, and of course, it's affected my life, my brother actually. But before we get into that, we want to know more about your speaking business. So tell us a little bit about it. What happens in the day of the life of Scott Lesnick when he speaks, and the items that you're talking about?
Well, if it's the day in the life of a particular day that I'm going to be speaking in front of a group, that one is all about arriving 24 hours early, unless it's local, and most of the gigs are not, and making sure everything's set up right, getting together with the meeting planners, making sure if they need anything, I help out. The AV people have everything. And then I like to meet and greet as many of the people that I'm going to be presenting to as possible, because it creates more of a friendly environment. And it's almost like they know the person who's up there instead of just a stranger who comes on and says, "Thank you very much," and leaves.
Good point.
So that's a bit of what I do just to during the day. And then, of course, there's preparation up to wazoo before that, all the things that everybody does behind the scenes to get ready and preparing different presentations. I mean, it takes somewhere upwards of 4 to 6 months for an hour-long keynote.
No kidding. Okay. Now, I've interviewed tons of speakers, and you're the first one to tell me that you meet and greet your listeners.
Absolutely. It's important. Not enough people do that. A lot do, but the attendees love that, and it gives you a better connection. Plus, the evaluations are usually better, I would imagine. But for me, that's one of the reasons I do this. I love hanging out with the people because I learn so much from them, the people that I'm presenting to. Their stories and things they tell me, it's great. It's an honor, actually.
You bet. Now, how did you get started in the speaking business, Scott?
It happened by accident, Andy. I was getting tired of corporate America and wanted to move on, and I had written this book, Kid Jack, and thought that might propel me into speaking, when in fact, because I was not known and I didn't have a real platform as the industry demands for a memoir, I ended up meeting my mentor, Liz Green, who teaches in the Academy with me. And she said, you should think about becoming a professional speaker. You already speak for your company. You do other things. So this would be a great fit. And you'll sell more books. So I went in a different direction. And then I did something that was not easy for any adult. I left my ego at home, started going to their meetings, and just said, teach me. I want to learn. And it worked out well.
That's fantastic. Now, let's talk about the content you speak about. One of them is growing sales and margins and managing better, which, of course, is directed at business, but is it a certain type of business that you specialize with, or is that in general?
It's in general because every presentation I do is customized. So if you're looking at my presentations and you're thinking, that might fit, once we speak and I learn more about your event, then I'm able to say, I'm not the right person, but this lady or this man who I know and I've seen speak rock, and they're a perfect fit. And oftentimes I am the right fit, and then we just talk more and I get in depth as to what they need and what they want their outcomes and takeaways to be. And I insert that into the presentations to customize it so that when I'm speaking to a group, they know I'm speaking to them and not just doing a canned presentation. Otherwise, they're not going to listen for more than 10 minutes.
Right. Now, listeners may want to know what makes you qualified to speak on that.
Well, I was waiting in line to get a beer one time, and there was this magazine, and I thought I'd read it. No, the truth is that I have 28 years with a Fortune 500 company in sales and management, and it's a Berkshire Hathaway company, so it's pretty big, one of Warren Buffett's. And I learned a lot and started off at the bottom and worked my way up. And there's a lot of things that I learned that I didn't know, and certain things that I did know, and I put everything together, and things I watched other people do that were great, some things that weren't so great, and I developed a program around that because the bottom line is people do want to increase sales, but in order to do that, you have to have happy employees. They want to increase their margins, but you have to be able to motivate these folks, and there are ways to manage better too. Today, there's the number one workforce being millennials. A lot of baby boomers and Gen Xers are having some difficulty figuring out how to navigate that. So I do that in this presentation and in another.
Okay. And another topic you're doing is managing, motivating, mentoring the four generations in the workplace. And when you say four generations, what do you mean by that?
Well, that one, it's a huge topic. So this is not anything I came up with. But I started watching some speakers, and I went online, and I thought, what are they missing? And the more I researched it, and the more I began to develop a program, I realized there were certain things that they were missing that I would want to hear, that I thought was important. So I ended up coming up with my own program, one that also, in the beginning, I got some static because, again, I would fly millennials flags really high. Not saying that they're everything, but this is why you need to not only recognize them, but appreciate them for who they are, where they're coming from, and they may be your manager tomorrow. So it was just something that appealed to me. Not a new concept, but my personal spin on it, and a lot of fun during the session. Everything except my keynotes are interactive because I like to engage people, so we have fun with that.
Okay. Yeah, that's finding that need in the marketplace. So it certainly sounds like you did that.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I've been wanting to talk to you about, I think, the topic that I'm going to guess that you're most passionate about, the getting your kids back after being kidnapped. Yeah,
that topic is something that, when my kids were young, they were kidnapped and taken to the Middle East by their mother. And at the time that this happened, Andy, there were no international laws. It's called the Hague Convention on International Aspect of Child Abduction, but Israel, the country they were taken to, was not a signatory. So that put me in a really bad position in the kids, too. There was no way I could get them home, and I had to try to figure out a way to do it without just curling up into a ball and giving up.
Now, can I interrupt you for a quick second and say, no,
yes, sir.
You were divorced at that point, or on your way to being?
No, I was married, living in the same house with my wife. She went to visit her family, said, I'm not coming back. I'm staying here with the kids. Why don't you move on with your life? However, I love you, honey. I just don't want to be in the States anymore, and you'll be fine.
Wow.
That didn't work for me.
when I commented earlier that I have something very in common with that, my brother
Yes.
was married to a Czechoslovakian lady. Her parents came over here when they were a communist country, and when the Czech Republic became democratic, they moved back. Apparently, they had a museum over there and worth, I guess, millions of dollars. And she became very disgruntled, like apparently your wife did. And in the interest of my brother saving his marriage, he relented and went along with her. She said, well, I'm going to take the kids over there, sell the house, get rid of the dog, sell the car, and meet us over there. And so all that happened. My brother was down to his car and his dog, and he had places for them, and he called her up and said, I'll be there in 2 weeks. And she said, why don't you just stay there? And he, in all this time, did not get to see his kids, but for maybe a grand total of maybe a week's worth. And he was, when that happens, as you know, you're an emotional cripple. Because that
absolutely, and the stress level, it is quite debilitating.
It is.
Try to keep your head together.
And he found people who internationally will go and kidnap them back for you. And because he was an emotional cripple and he was blinded like love blinds, well, this was blinding him. Mm-hmm. He went and got a loan for $50,000, gave it to this guy who was on like 60 Minutes or something, purported to be good at doing this, and the guy didn't lift a finger. But anyway, Go ahead and tell your story.
That desperate move is very, very common, and it's something that people will do, and it's not something that I consider doing the same thing. As a matter of fact, I had a friend, Coco, who insisted I find mercenaries, hire them, and fly over to Israel, find the kids, get them back on a plane, and get them back to America and pay them whatever they want. So that suggestion and thought was put in my mind several times.
So how did you ultimately? How did you get him back?
I spent 5 months trying to figure out how to do things without the Hague. And one day I just realized I was actually just shaving, and my mind was on cruise control. And I thought to myself, I'm going about this wrong. I'm trying to go around Lisa, my wife, to get our kids back, but I need to go through her. So I changed a lot of what I was doing. I became softer, more sympathetic, gentle, said the words she wanted to hear, repeated back sentences she had said to reassure her, and her guard went down. And what really helped is she was not mad at me. I had done nothing wrong at all. She had no reason to be, but so I began to just work on this, getting her guard down, and people in the Middle East, they're tough. But once it went down enough, I said, I'd like to come visit you and the kids, and she said yes. And that's when I had hired an attorney, had this big plan, and went over there, took the 13-hour nonstop flight from Chicago, and worked on getting the kids back. And my whole plan was to do it within 1 week. I needed to get in there and out of there as quick as possible. She has a huge family. 2 of her brothers are cops. And, well, they dug me family's family, and I knew I was not in a safe place. So I was fortunate, skilled, lucky. And I was able to get kids on a plane with Lisa because she, under the guise that I would come back, we would sell our house and move to Israel. And her father was against it. And a lot of other people were, but finally they gave me their blessings, which seemed weird because these were my children. But so the only way I could get them back was by walking on an airplane with them, kids in tow, and Lisa. And that's what I did.
So during that week, you got her to let you take them back to the U.S. with you.
I got her to agree to come back with us.
Oh, okay.
To the U.S., and 2 days after we arrived, because I knew flying back and forth to the Middle East in a week, I knew it would take a little bit of a toll on me. Plus, I was emotionally weak, mentally drained, and physically exhausted. So I gave myself 2 days to recover, and then she was served with divorce papers, and then things went a little south from there.
Now, I can't imagine the adrenaline that had to be going through you for days.
Yes. Just to stay alert and awake enough and to make sure I didn't say anything stupid when I was over there was a lot. And there were several things that occurred while I was over there, too, that were less than comforting. But I was able to get the kids back here and with Lisa. And as soon as we did get back, the first thing I did is make sure that my best friend took their passports and put them in a very safe, which would make it a lot more difficult to get them out of the country.
I'll be darned. And so you've had them there all this time then?
They were in America for several years, and then Israel decided, which was wonderful, that they were going to sign the Hague Convention, and they did. And once they did that, my wife appealed to the judge and said, "Look, now Israel has signed it. Let us go. But let me go back with the kids for a few months. So I'll bring them back." And the judge said, "Okay." And my attorney and I said, "Look, you've seen the psychologicals. You've seen everything else. This is not going to end well for the kids, and she's not coming back." And she didn't. So the second time that she kidnapped them, I had to go back and go all the way up to, but not the Supreme Court. I had to go up to appellate courts, and it was a monster ordeal.
You had to do that again?
Yes, sir. And it's funny. When I do an hour-long keynote, people will ask me questions afterwards if it's that sort of setting, or they'll ask me outside of the conference room, or they'll email me because everyone has my email, and they go, "Well, wait, you never mentioned this and that." I'm like, "I have 60 minutes. I said, you may have trouble talking for 5 minutes up there, but getting this story, I could talk for 5 hours as long as I have a little nervousness on stage." I said, "So, I can tell you everything." I said, when you go see a movie, you get some of the details. So this is what I'm doing. I'm kind of giving you the movie version a little bit, and the book always it gets more in depth. So yeah, it did happen twice, Andy, unfortunately. But it ended well.
Good. Now, how old are your kids now?
The kids now it's amazing. They just turned 26 and 28. They live close by in Chicago, and we've got a very close relationship.
Girl and boy? Or?
And I was boy and girl, yeah, Jonathan and Alexandra, and I was able to, I got lucky, really lucky. I married for the second time a wonderful lady named Meg, and Meg ended up becoming not only a phenomenal wife, partner, and friend, but a great mother, stepmother to Jonathan and Allie, and she's the go-to person. I think if they pick up the phone to call anybody, it's going to be me, but most of the time it'll be Meg, which is a great testament to her.
Well, that's really neat. I'm happy for you. It's a shame that you had to go through that, but then again, when you look back on adversities, there's some good stuff that comes out of them.
Absolutely, and that's one of the good things is now when I tell the story, or I do breakout sessions, or I do coaching or consulting, I'm able to talk about some of these things and understand some of the adversity people go through, which is why the next book I wrote was all about people, regular folks, and adversities they've gone through, because I kind of get it. Not specifically. I mean, if you had something tragic happen that I couldn't understand, I would tell you right away I don't get it, but it helps, and it's made me a better speaker because I can empathize even more with my audience and whatever stress they're going through. Most people haven't had their children kidnapped and taken to a Middle Eastern country, but they've gone through something, either the loss of a loved one or a relationship that was really close, or maybe a diagnosis from a doctor they didn't want to hear. So they understand deep doo-doo.
Right. Well, what a story, Scott. That's amazing. I'm going to want to read your book. I'll have to tell my brother about it. He's actually married to a German woman, and he lives in Germany now. But,
oh my gosh, good for him. How's he doing?
Well, I don't know. We don't talk a whole lot. I think he's doing okay, but I don't know that we've talked about his kids before, and he just shuts it down because he doesn't want to think about it, and it's still really painful for him. He loved those children so much, and tried so hard to. Yeah, he tried so hard to get with them, and she just continually made it difficult, and so, bully for you that you.
I actually made it easy for my ex-wife to see the kids when we were here, to a certain extent, as long as we stayed within certain guidelines, and that was not enough for her either. So I'm so sorry for your brother. I do feel for him. It's a hole that it's just, you can't really replace that. That's very difficult.
It is, and it's, we're all on a journey in this life. And it's amazing the different journeys there are, and his will make sense to him someday, I think.
It will. I'm glad he found someone else, and hopefully he's been able to move on in some ways. And we'll connect. I'll send you a copy of my book, Andy, so you can have it. Maybe you'll share it with your brother.
I'd love to.
Or maybe it's something he does not want to read.
Well, Scott, thank you.
But at least
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, at least it's coming from a perspective of somebody who can honestly look them in the eye and go, I understand.
Yeah, been there, did that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Scott, thank you so much for giving us some insight into what's been going on behind the scenes with you. That was fascinating information.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Andy.
You're welcome. And the connection of, the kids being kidnapped, like I say, that wasn't mine, but I can certainly relate, and I just already feel like I know you.
Yeah, I do too, Andy. And talking to you beforehand was wonderful. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the opportunity. This has been wonderful.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.